Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. Today we sit down with a fellow podcaster, tradesperson, and business owner. Joshua Gillo joins us today to talk all about his journey from being a farmer to designer of outdoor spaces. Joshua is a lifelong learner who took his passion for working with his hands and always improving and turned it into a fantastic career from landscaping to designing to consulting. He's got to be one of the most honest and transparent guests to come on the show and is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to business, leadership, and sales. So tune in to hear all about his journey through the trades and how they led him to his own definition of success, which is complete and utter freedom, and allowed him to engage his flow state, which is talking to fascinating people. And definitely check out his incredible podcast, Outerspaces, available everywhere you can listen to podcasts. And don't forget, as always, to subscribe to this channel and on our website at blueisthenewwhite.com to receive all the latest updates. As always, this show's not monetized and we don't run ads. We rely strictly on word of mouth from our listeners to further the mission. So if you enjoyed this episode, please take a second to rate it, review it, and share it with your friends. The future generations of tradespeople depend on it. They depend on you. So thank you again and enjoy this episode of the Blue is the New White podcast with Joshua Gillo. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. We took a little break there for a couple of weeks, but we are back in action with Joshua Gillo from Outerspaces. I had the privilege of being on this guy's podcast a couple of times now, and he is now joining us on Blue is the New White. So Joshua, man, finally, welcome to the show, bud.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. Thanks a lot for having me on. And, I can't wait to have a good conversation. We had an awesome one yesterday on mine. I can't wait to just extend that over to you and land some nuggets here. I can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too, bud. And for those that don't know, I'm just going to start it off and tell people to check out your podcast. It's called Outerspaces. Really awesome. What platforms is it on? I know it's on Spotify, but all the major ones, right?
It's everywhere. Yeah, it's everywhere. Apple, you'll find us. Just Outerspaces podcast. You'll find us.
Awesome. All right. So Joshua, for those who don't know who you are, why don't you give us a rundown of you, where you come from and how you got to where you are today, man?
Absolutely, dude. I'd love to. So I was born and raised in the cornfields of Pennsylvania, nice rural area. And at around age 5, my mother and father, they started a garden center, selling plants and raising plants and all that. And so I grew up in that model. I have a brother that's about 18 months younger than me. And we grew up together working for, from 5 till roughly 18 without being paid, right? Farmers don't get paid. So we worked and built one hell of a work ethic in that world. And, the cool part was we got to learn how to help people. We got to learn how to work and how to use our heads and build stuff. Because on farms, you got to use your hands, right? We didn't have people to fix stuff and to build stuff. We had to figure it out, right? So my father was amazing that way and instilled in both of his boys the ability to fix things and use your hands and solve problems. We had no other choice, right? So we did that for the first many years. And then around age 18, I decided, once I graduated from high school, I decided to start a landscaping company because it was a pretty easy segue right from the garden center, right? And we had clients coming in and they were, or I should say customers coming in and they would say, hey, can your boys install this? Can they build this for me? Can they do that? And, I've never been paid. We live within our means, you know what I mean? And we weren't making tons of bank that way, but we were fine. We had food on the table. We had great times. Simple life, but I loved it, right? But anyway, so clients come in and the customers come in and they start talking about hiring us to do work around the house. And I'll never forget it, Josh. I'll never forget the first time a client said to us, hey, can you come out and do something? And we said, sure. And we gave them a price for it and went out and did it. And I remember coming back with money in my pocket. I was like, holy shit. So I sweated for a day and I actually have money at the end of it. Like, this is brand new. Like this whole idea of hardworking actually comes with some fruit at the end of it. So anyway, because we used to work on farms for $20 a day, baling hay in a 95, 100 degree heat in Pennsylvania, right? That's how we made extra money. And I invested it wisely back then. The reason why we would do that, my brother and I had similar interests. The reason why we would do that is because we wanted money to buy RC car parts, right? So,
yes.
because those things broke all the time. So we would go and get the $20 and I'd go down to a place called Trains and Lanes and we would buy a new motor or a new this or a new that and put it in. And we'd had a little race car track we built on the farm and we would race around when we had 5 minutes off because we worked 6-7 days a week. You know what I mean? And so anyway, so that's how that started out. And then I never forget the first day when I made $1,000 in a day. I was like, oh my God, wait, there's 6-7 days in a week, depending on what we're doing with Sunday, right? It's like 6-7 days. I'm like, holy crap, we could make some money. So that's when we started the business. My father, my brother, and I came together. We started, doing odd jobs, mostly landscaping things. And that kind of moved and melded into more design because I love design and creation. So I started designing outdoor spaces and landscape spaces and all of that. And it kind of evolved from little, hand drawings. And then, I started getting into more CAD type stuff and then into 3-dimensional, modeling and all that. So anyway, that's how it all started in the beginning.
That's a far cry from baling hay, man.
Oh, dude, trust me, hell of a lot easier too. On days like today, Pennsylvania, it's 95 degrees outside, humid as hell, and I'm inside talking to you. I'm like, I've come a long way, man. And I feel it, I know it, and I appreciate every second of it. So did that for 15 years, my brother and father, and decided to get more focused. My passion started driving more towards the design side of the outdoor living arena. And I didn't want to be managing all the crews and all of the, having the machinery break and blah, blah, blah. As soon as we have some money in the bank, next thing you know, the truck would break down and needs a new transmission or engine or blah, blah, blah. Let's keep going through, right? Or, employees wouldn't show up. They'd be drunk, whatever, right? It just became a thing. And I said, you know what if I could peel off my favorite parts of what I love to do is to create awesome spaces for my clients. How can I peel off the parts I love about this and then just build the new models? That's when I designed or created a design manage company we call Master Plan. I've been doing that now for almost 12 years. And we design and build outdoor living spaces all over Eastern Pennsylvania. And we do it with our preferred partners, right? I don't call them subcontractors. That word is dirty and nasty. Nobody likes that word. Homeowners like, oh, really? You got subcontractors? But like when you go to your doctor and you say, they refer you out to a specialist, i.e. subcontractor, right? A specialist, right? All of a sudden you're like, that's not so bad. Or even, you get into calling them your craftsmen or whatever, like that kind of thing. We've been doing that model for now 12 years and I absolutely love it, dude. My team is super small. We're extremely stupid efficient and we have a great time with our clients. And it's all for us. It's all about the customer experience. The human experience in the space, that's for the design focus, and then also the customer experience from beginning to end, from first call till last handshake, and beyond. So been very blessed with an incredible, opportunity and tons of great clients to work with. And, on top of that, I'm married. I've been married almost, well, my wife would kill me now since I don't know this. I think 17 years this year. And we have 2 beautiful sons, Jacob, who's turning 15 in 2 days, and Oliver, who's turning 12 here in February, or 13 in February. So, it's interesting to raise kids. And, what I've noticed the most, and I'm a little off topic here, Josh, but what I've noticed the most is my leadership ability has, 10x'd since I had 2 boys. Like, when I didn't have kids, it was just about managing myself and that kind of stuff. But when you start having to manage a family and all those kinds of things, those things that they section right out into the work world, right out into business, because they're not all that different.
Yeah.
Managing people, managing kids, all this kind of stuff. It's not all that different. So anyway, now I'm blessed to be able to consult and help the industry with, we have a sales program and a design program that we help people with around the country. And just tons of other stuff. But that's probably the quickest snapshot of what's going on in my world.
That's awesome, man. It sounds like you've had an incredible journey, through the trades, and one that honestly, I feel like many people wouldn't consider, right? I mean, when they're young and when they're thinking about careers and what could be lucrative and what they could succeed at and all that, you don't go right to designing outdoor spaces. You just don't. You group that in the same category as trimming trees and cutting grass. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right, dude. This was not a plan, right? So it wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's 16. I got to make a decision on where I'm going to go in life. Oh, outdoor living would be amazing. Oh, I'm going to go to school for that. I'm going to go do this. And like, that was not the fucking plan, dude. It was like, there was no plan. I was just so used to using my hands that I knew I'd land somewhere in the creative building kind of world, but I had no idea. Yeah. And it just so easily segued from one to another that I built a career out of it, and it's so crazy when it comes to humble beginnings, because dude, working through the years in that business and all that, and even before that, even in high school, like I was not the popular kid in school, very quiet, flying a wall kind of guy. I actually played the saxophone in the fucking marching band. I don't tell that often, but I'm telling you, that's how fucking cool I was, dude. Like I had cool written all over me.
I played the fucking alto sax, bro.
Me too. No shit.
Yeah.
Must have been a Josh thing.
Yeah, I guess so.
Were you in the marching band too?
I was not. Okay, so you got me.
That's one level higher. Yeah, that's one level higher, dude. If you ought to see the outfits we had to wear. It was disgusting. But anyway, I look back upon those times as favorable, but not repeatable. Let's put it that way. So I won't force my kids to do that stuff. And I actually, funny enough, have my saxophone on Craigslist after 20 years now to sell. I'm trying to get rid of this thing. So anyway, I haven't picked it up once since the high school I graduated.
Don't make me look at it anymore. I want to see.
Oh my God. It's like, I mean, we had a lot of good times, I have to say, but thinking back about it, it was not your standardized kind of, raising, if you will. We worked hard, and that's what we did for fun, was play instruments and run around in the grass. But, it was a great way to make connections with people and to, just to add value. It was a lot of fun. We did have a lot of fun back then. But I don't have a cool story like played football and went to states, or like I never. Funny enough, we did all the halftime shows and I never watched the game, so I don't even know a lot about it. So,
awesome, that's perfect.
I was always checking the girls out. That's the cool part.
Yeah, man, that's right there. You got front row seat, bro. But so let me ask you this, and let's rewind a little bit. In high school, so you grew up kind of working with your hands, and it sounds like on a farm. So you had this instilled in you in a young age that that hard work with your hands can be satisfying, right? And maybe
100%.
you didn't know how lucrative it could be, but definitely satisfying and definitely rewarding in some aspects. So what was it like for you in school when you were growing up? Were your friends going off to college, and did you consider it? And how did that look for you in your high school days?
That's a great question. I was part of the farmer posse, we'd call ourselves, right?
Okay.
The guys that would come into school with work boots and Levi jeans on and flannels. That's just how we dress, man, because after school we'd go out hunting and things like that, or we'd go, get in the truck and go out for a smoke break and come running back. You know what I mean? Like these kinds of things in high school. But, overall, it was a very rural school, so it was very normal there.
Got it.
Some did go off to college. They did that. I did go to a trade school. I went there for 2 years to learn architectural, mechanical drafting and engineering. That was something that intrigued me and was not part of the plan. It's a story. I couldn't make up a goofier story, but my mother's like, I got this thing in the mail the other day that Lincoln Tech is offering, free tuition for someone that takes this test. And when they take this test, if they score really high, then you're going to be able to get this, a free ride. And I'm like, I'm a smart guy. Let's figure it out. So I went out and took the test. And I'm the first one in my family all the way back that has ever gone to any kind of trade school or college. Like that's not a thing. It's always hands-on. My father was a meat cutter and a butcher for most of his life and worked on farms. And my mother, she worked at a cash register and then was a stay-at-home mom. So, and then it just keeps going back that same. So all trades, all hands-on, that's been very much the mantra in the family. So I was like the first one to do this. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do it. Anyway, I went and took the test. I'm like, you know what? I can get into that. And I didn't get the scholarship. I'm not all that bright. So I didn't get that scholarship, but I thought, why not? My mom's like, well, you know what? Worst case scenario, you have something to fall back on. I'm thinking, yeah, why not? So I did that for 2 years. We started out with 40 some kids in a class. It was not a big school by any means in our architecture class. And we graduated with 14. And it's incredible. I learned a lot there. And a lot of that gave me a ton more confidence when I was designing for my clients. That, so many others, they have this imposter syndrome where they're like, I don't know what I'm not a designer. I'm not a designer. Well, nobody truly is unless you believe you are. And, that helped me believe quicker, faster. But, so that's how that happened.
Okay. Well, that's super interesting. So then talk to me about after school. Was this, so when you went to this architectural drafting school, this was from 18 to 20-ish or somewhere around
roughly
there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So were you doing the landscape? Were you starting the landscape business at the same time?
Yep. And I was working at a restaurant too with my
really?
hands. I was bussing tables. Because I needed money at that point, right? I had expenses at that point. My parents weren't paying for anything. So it's like,
that clock hits 18 and you're
let's go.
Yeah.
I gave it a work ethic. Now you go get the money. Right. And I love that my parents did it that way, that my father always told me, he said, look, find something that you love, that you're passionate about, and the money will always follow. Yep. It's not money first, passion first. And that has been something that has been in my soul since day one. and it's led me in a very good trail, a very good path. And anyway, so I go and working at a restaurant. I'm bussing tables at night. I'm out there. The best job I had at that restaurant was valet parking cars. That was it. You were the latest in and you were the first out, and it was all cash. It was such a great job. I love that thing. You work like 2-3 hours, you would clear more bank than you would in that restaurant for the whole night.
Plus you get to drive a shitload of cars.
Oh yeah, some cool stuff too. So we had a lot of fun with that. I could tell you stories on a whole nother podcast about that. But anyway, we had a good time with that. And, I did maintenance for the building, that kind of stuff, hands-on, right? It worked out really well. But yeah, we're doing all those things at the same time starting out because we weren't that busy starting out. So that worked out well. But it planted the seeds for now. I'm 43 and it's planted some incredible seeds, and I've got some great oak trees growing. So it's great.
Talk to me about that. The oak trees that you got growing.
Yeah. So, I mean, with that work ethic that my father instilled, my mother too instilled in me, it creates inside a deep need to complete things, right? There's no giving up. It's a matter of you might not make the right decision in the beginning. You might have, quote unquote, failed, but you only fail when you stop.
Yes.
When you quit. That's what failure is when you fucking quit. And you know what? I didn't have any quitter in me. We didn't have a choice as children to quit because that wasn't an option on the table. So we had to keep going. And as we kept going, we're like, all right, cool. Maybe it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, but we kept going. I learned something. So I've rewired the whole concept of failure and call it learning. And, I have a lot of successes, and I've learned a hell of a lot along this way here, Josh, as you have, I'm sure, as well. Right. So we keep moving forward and keep failing forward and focusing. And, throughout those years of learning, I learned how to run a business. That's some of the oak tree, right? Because once you can learn how to run a business, you can learn how to run other businesses because it's really the same language, just different colors. Right. So it's a matter of knowing some of those details. I learned that the hard way. From underpricing myself to get work and then losing money, not knowing what my overhead was, not even knowing what the hell overhead was. And, buying stuff on emotion. Like, I'm going to go buy that truck. I'll look fucking awesome sitting there, my arms sitting out the window, my name on the door, right? Buying this expensive stuff. And then after years of that, you start seeing all this iron laying around the yard and it's not being used. And then the tail starts wagging a dog with payments. Where my accountant's like, you know what? You could buy another truck and then you could offset your taxes. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. I can go buy another truck. So I go out and buy another truck. The next thing you know, I've got a bunch of them sitting there and my payments are ridiculous. In the wintertime, I'm just sitting here like, how are we going to pay these payments, right? All to save taxes. So I learned the hard way not to do that, unless it's a part of your strategy, but not to do it because.
Well, that's a buzzword. I want to touch on that real quick, just because there's a lot of people out there that are under that impression. Oh, it's a write-off. We need the write-off.
Yeah.
And I just want to clarify what that means. It still means you're given $1 to get 50 cents back. Actually, to get about 20 cents back, if we're being realistic.
Right, yeah.
So, be very careful with how you interpret that.
Yeah. If it's part of your tax strategy, then that makes perfect sense. But if it just gives you a green light to go spend an amount of stupid money on big shit that you can look cool in, don't do it.
Yeah.
Seriously, don't do it because it became pretty ugly. And after I finally paid all that stuff off, then I learned the hard lesson. I'm like, okay, well, my tax guy's trying to do what he does right? He tells me how to manage and pay less tax. He doesn't care about how I'm going to pay the rest off. So, but again, tons of that kind of thing. Learning how to have a conversation with people. In the beginning, people get a little scared about the concept of selling, right? Going out and selling people things. And the reason why they feel icky and nasty about selling is because they feel like it's somehow, I don't know, not real, not the real part of it, but it's somehow that you're trying to manipulate people to do something you want them. You're trying to force something on them for money. And I'm here to say that that's what I thought in the beginning too, until I realized that I was doing it wrong. And when I switched the hats and started becoming a guide for my clients and started saying, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm probably the worst salesperson you'll ever meet. I'm here to help you. I'm here to guide you to find the best path forward. And hopefully it's us. Right. And we're going to work on solutions. We're going to work on all that stuff. And when I took the pressure of sell, and focused on guide, help, value, all those kinds of things, the business blew the fuck up, man. Yeah. It just blew up. And, it's amazing to see. And then the referrals kept cranking out. It was because I wasn't focused on the outcome or the income. I was focused on the outcome. Right. And with that flip, it changed everything. Because I'm like, wait a minute, if I give value first, more value than they expect. If my design that I'm going to charge them is $1,000 and I can give them $10,000 worth of value, before that, just through good conversations and just holding their hand and making sure they don't do stupid things and buy a fire pit when they don't need it, and I can save them money. The next thing you know, they're like, oh, wow, that seems extremely reasonable. Here's the check.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not going in saying, what can I get from them? But going in first with value and then work our way back out. Right. Because the sale is a part of the entire client experience. It shouldn't just be a once up front, get the check and run kind of thing. Because if you're just looking at that, you're going to be like a prostitute, right? It's just you're in and out. You're going to be transaction. And I learned the hard way that transformations are far more long lasting, far more valuable, and far more fun, right? So we have a focus here, Yes Express, and at Master Plan as well, is we're always focusing on transformations, not transactions. Because when you take your client, you transform them through a sales process, which becomes their journey, which becomes part of their client experience. You take them through that. You understand what's in their head. You understand what they're fearing, how you solve those problems for them, what you stand for and what you do not stand for as a business. When you can clarify that very early in your process, like your initial call or even your discovery meeting, right? If you can get those things nailed down on day one, imagine how much simpler the entire process is for not just you, but for your clients as well. And you get to stand out because no one else is doing it. They're coming in saying, hey, Mrs. Jones, what do you need fixed? Right? Or, hey, she calls and next thing you know, it's like it's Tuesday and she calls and she's like, oh, no problem. I can be out there tonight. Yeah. Like seriously, unless you're doing emergency work or that kind of thing, I totally get that. But if you're not, if you're doing design builder installations, those kinds of things, give them some space. Because if you can do it that fast, guess what you're thinking? He must be cheap.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Give him some space.
That's good advice.
Yeah, give him some space. Because if you're not available for another week, you must be like, man, he is slammed. I expect to pay more. Somebody else did.
So let me ask you this. I mean, you're very well spoken. You're very intelligent. I can tell about your business and how to run it and this kind of stuff. And I'm gonna play devil's advocate here because I already I know this. This is I talk to people all the time that are in the same position, right? But we often see the same stereotypes, and that stereotype is going to go something like this: Joshua, how on earth did a lowly farmer get so smart?
That's a great question. I'm gonna give you the short answer to that, Josh. I actually take books and instead of reading them, I just put them under my pillow and they just by osmosis go into my head.
You know what? I do this same thing.
I wish that worked. I've tried it. It doesn't work.
I actually have an outlet in my bedroom, just like the Matrix. And you just plug one end of the outlet in. All right, you rip the other end of the outlet out of whatever it's plugged into there, and you just take those two wires and whatever you want to learn, man, just like that.
Dude, I can't wait for those days.
Try it.
I'm gonna have to try. I'm gonna have to. If you got that on Amazon, send me the link. And it's funny you say plugged in because my bed's actually plugged into the wall. We have grounding sheets on our bed, and we plug it in so that we are connected to Earth energy 24/7. Or when we're sleeping.
You and I need to be better friends, bro. That is that's awesome.
Yep. So it's, constantly, grounding and earth energy and all that stuff, keep myself focused. But anyway, so as far as, how do you get these smarts to get moving forward? And I did not start with that. We had very much a farmer's mentality. My parents have been in the garden center. That garden center is still running almost 40 years now. Wow. And they've kept it moving for that long. And I can't say it's been growing, but it's been sustaining, and they're now close to retirement age and they're just having fun with it. Right. So, but the point is, I saw them get to a certain point, and thank God they did what they did. Thank God they taught my brother and I how to be, in control of our destiny more than anything else, right? To own our own business. My father, worked for people for many years, and my mother did before, we were born. So for them, they were the first in their families, respectively, to be entrepreneurs, to own a business. They were the first to say, I want to create my own path. And I have such respect for that, because that had to be one hell of a gut check. And you know what? I just know what I want, and that's it. So I have tons of respect for that. And in that, they taught by modeling, not by words, but by modeling that lifestyle that, hey, you can do it too. And I had no other, I worked at a restaurant because it was fun, and we made some money, that kind of thing. My brother worked there too. He kind of does a lot of things that I do. But anyway, so with that being said, when it came time to start a business, it was like, okay, cool. I've already seen it done. I've lived in it. So why not go? Right. But the problem is that it's a different business. And I didn't understand business. I just worked in it with my father, who really didn't understand business. And to be honest with you, doesn't still understand it today. But the point is that he had enough smarts to get where he went. And I got to give him tons of respect for that. But for me, it was a matter of how far could we take this? How big can we get? And not even just by volume, but how much of my God-given talents can we bring to the world? How much of my ability can we unlock? Not just mine, but the teams and everybody else around, right? So anyway, I started to read books at that point, and I hated reading books. So I'd buy I shouldn't say reading, I actually bought the CDs, right? Yeah. I'd put in the CDs in the car and I'd drive and I'd listen. I'm like, this is the best thing. I get the information, but I don't have to read, because I could not focus for shit as a younger kid, dude. I could not. And if I sat down and tried to open a book, I'd look at it and the words would kind of move around. Then I'd have like maybe a paragraph or two and I couldn't concentrate. Then I'd go back and reread. I'd get frustrated and throw it away. I'm the guy that used to buy the Cliff Notes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. The Cliff Notes. And that's how I got through books in school. Or I asked the cute girl next to me and she told me what was going on. But that was never my thing. And I'm like, I'm a farmer. I don't need that stuff. But again, identity, right? That's what I identified as. That's a farmer. And the next thing you know, that's all farmers need to do. But I need to go to the next level. And what does that look like? And how are you possibly going to get there when you don't know the next steps? And it's scary shit, right? So when you're making money and everything is good, that's great. But when things get tight, like 07, 08, 0809, like that range of time when things got goofy, thank goodness that I did a lot of that reading and did a lot of that stuff. So went to a lot of seminars and that kind of thing. I started getting involved in that. And the reason why I even started going to any kind of events or seminars like that is because my wife, she's a chiropractor. And that is very much, put into their world. When they graduate, they still keep going to events to keep their philosophy and everything really tight. And I honestly had never been to one. So you got this farmer going into a chiropractic seminar with hundreds of people. They're all hugging each other, men hugging men. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is really different from what I'm used to. Right. So, and I mean, it wasn't like, it wasn't a lot of none of the gay stuff like that wasn't the thing, but it was just, men that are just happy and embracing like human beings embracing each other. And I'd never seen that before. So it was kind of strange. The first big hug I got from a guy in a 5 o'clock shadow scratched my face. I'm like, oh boy, that's kind of strange. But anyway, I got used to these events. And, I sat down the first few and I would sit there and they would talk and they kept talking about, chiropractic, all this kind of stuff, subluxation, all this stuff that, all their buzzwords. And I'm sitting there thinking like, why the hell am I here? They're not talking anything about garden center or landscaping or any of these things. Like, why am I here? It took me a little while. The mind trash kicked in and I was like, man, what if I what if is one of my two favorite words. What if I just switched the word chiropractic with landscaping? Let's see how that works. And I never looked back. And then I took so many things that I learned at those seminars and those events and turned them into my business. So I was the first in my industry to do the things they were talking about, because my industry, the contracting and landscaping, like it's been dead forever. Like there's really it was done once and everybody just keeps riding this or writing the same, filling in the same forms. They don't even think about what could be done differently. So we got to bring that to the field, and we were the first to charge for design work, because I know you would pay your architect, you'd pay your lawyer. Why wouldn't you pay your designer? Mm-hmm. Regardless if I'm wearing work boots or really, really nice polished shoes, it doesn't matter. We're still humans providing value, right? So anyway, with that being the case, it really, that kind of exposure helped me start to ask bigger questions. I think that's really what it is. And I was surrounded by millionaires all the time at those things, right? They were very, very aggressive business people. They had, multiple practices across different countries and all this stuff. And I'm like, holy shit, that's possible. And I know that. We just had dinner with that guy last night. Like, he's the nicest guy. I thought those people would like never talk to me. And like, it just became this, it opened up tons and tons of doors in my mind for what's possible. Anyway, so fast forward, I started to get a sense of how getting in proximity of other people, how there's so much power in that. So then I started taking on a bunch of other events and started actually reading. I did force myself to read a book that I couldn't get on CD. So I actually sat down on a weekend and read it, and then said, you know what? Okay, it's time to start really focusing. And that's where the discipline started in my life. And that's when everything changed.
Wow. And that's super interesting, because, and the reason I asked you that question is because I think a lot of the people out there, they have these preconceived notions. Right. And even some of the people in the trades, man, I talk to, they think that they're there because they're not smart, and this is a common misperception that we see across the industry. And so, one of the reasons I asked you that question is because it is entirely possible and even plausible, that anybody, whether you have a formal education or not, can be a lifelong learner and can acquire the skills both physically and mentally, to be successful. So you don't have to put everybody in this same box that says, if you don't go to college, you're going to be a piece of shit for the rest of your life. That's just not how it works. I mean, you and I are sitting here having an intelligent conversation, and you've got 2 years of trade school over any formal education that I have. You know what I mean? And it's it's unbelievable. And I think that's the glass ceiling that we got to shatter. And that's what I'm trying to do, obviously with this podcast. So one of the questions I have with regard to that is something you said earlier. You said you put your passion first. And this is intriguing to me, right? Because, I go back and forth on this, and I used to go back and forth on this, and I finally landed as I got older. I understood a little bit more about how this actually works and how it's perceived, right? You tell somebody that if they follow their passion when they're 16, 17, 18 years old, they're going to be street racers, video gamers, and Instagram influencers, because that's what they're passionate about. But really, as you get older, you understand what that phrase really means, and it's find the passion in what it is that you do. Like, listen, bro, when I got into the trades, I was fixing fryers and ovens and grease traps and hoods. There was not a part of me that was passionate about, going elbow deep in 7-year-old fryer grease, in some of these nasty restaurants that I was in, But if I looked deeper, right, I did have a passion for helping people. I had a passion for hearing somebody say thank you 1,000 times because I got their oven working on a Friday night. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to run their family business. I was passionate about being able to build something bigger than myself, right? Even if that meant me having to do this dirty work for as long as it took, because it was for something more. And now we've got 70 employees that I take care of. That's 70 families that rely on me, all because I was willing to get a little fucking dirty at one point. And that's fueling your passion. So I want to point that out first and foremost to my listeners, but then I also want to kind of dig in from your perspective. Is that similar to what happened with you, or do you physically have a passion for, some of this maintenance and work that you're doing?
Well, that's a great question, and we could do a whole podcast just on that one. But in the beginning, it was, in the beginning, I would do what was needed, right? I didn't really think much about the passion side of things. I was like, all right, it's easy. I'm young. I've got plenty of energy. It was all of that stuff. And we could make some money with it. I just focused on that, to be honest with you. Around that age was what it was. But as I started aging and getting older, I started realizing that, life is finite. We only get so many days, hours, minutes. And when God says it's done, you're ready to go with me, then it's like, hey, you got to go. So I realized that I have to try to get as much as I can done. As I'm getting older, I realized that even more. But my point is that when I had to do a lot of thinking, especially when my kids were born, about time allocation and what I'm going to be doing and how much I want to be away from them and all that. And I started saying, what, and I read this in a book somewhere, I don't remember which book it was, but it's called this concept of flow state, right? Where you get into a flow state where, and flow state is if you've ever done something, maybe you're reading or watching your kids or running or whatever it might be, working your profession, and you lose track of time, and you do it often during that one thing you do, or many things you do, but during that time, and you're like, holy crap, it's 2:00 already. I just looked at the clock, it was 8 a.m. If you get into that a lot, you found your passion. You found your flow state. If you can live in flow state your whole life. We were just talking about this in the podcast yesterday, weren't we? It was like, you can live in your flow state your whole life, you're going to live longer. There's plenty of studies showing that the stress levels are so much less. You actually show up happy. Your teams like you more. You like them more. Everything's amazing. So, in order to find that, it is to just think about it and write it down on a piece of paper as you're going along in a day. Find something you're like, what? I could do this a lot and be totally happy. For me, in the beginning, it was design. I could get a hand drawing, or I could get into a three-dimensional design, and I would lose track of all time. I'd be like, I want to shut everything off, a phone off, everything. And I just want to be lost in this design. And I know I found my flow state. I found my passion at the time. But the crazy thing about passion, Josh, is it changes. And we talked about this yesterday too, about identity, right? Because I was the business owner, a partner in that business owner, and I was also a designer in there too. So if anybody would ask me, like, so what do you do at a cocktail party? I'd be like, I'm a designer. Sounds sexy, right? I'm a designer. I'm not going to say I was that guy playing the saxophone in the marching band that you just watched. I was like, I'm a designer, right? So anyway, with that being the case, it was great. But then eventually I hired somebody to do that. and they became a team member, and they do it better than I do, to be quite honest with you. And I had a problem. I had an identity problem. I'm not talking about pronouns here. I'm talking about like, who am I within the project, right? Within the business, within the structure, within life. What do I tell people at a cocktail party? So anyway, I had to go back and think about it. Say, all right, well, now you are, you're a leader. You're leading people that know how to do things better than you do. So now we have to get the skills to become that person that can do that effectively, or they're not going to stick around long. If you're just focused on you, they're going to be like, all right, well, not really seeing much ladder here for me. And I'm going to just kind of stick around for a little while until it gets boring and I'm gone. So how do you keep developing yourself as a leader so that you can keep moving forward? So there's so many things we can go into in this detail, but hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. It definitely does. And again, I just want to put into perspective exactly what that means, because I don't want anyone under the impression, that it has to be one or the other, that there's a middle ground in there, and that, it is going to change, that's what I was hoping that you were going to say, right? Is it changes for all of us all the time. My wants and needs and passions are way different, especially, if you look at before I had kids compared to when, after I had kids. I used to want that glass house on the edge of a mountain bluff overlooking the ocean, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then as soon as my daughters were born, it was, okay, glass houses are very dangerous, especially at the edge of a cliff, right? I need something on ground level,
Yeah.
and so it does, it changes. And that's important to understand, especially in the pursuit of success.
Yep.
Speaking of success, one of the other things that you said that you had developed through this whole process and working with your hands is a deep need to complete things, which you and I share quite a bit. And actually, probably, if I'm being honest with myself, it's a bit to a fault. Because if I can't complete something, say I'm doing a project around the house or something, changing a shower door, whatever it may be, and something goes wrong, I will literally spend hours until 3:00 in the morning just making sure I get it done. Otherwise, I cannot sleep, I cannot eat, and it gnaws at me.
Must be a Josh thing. I don't know. It's the same way.
My gosh. And it's the same with my business too, right? But
yeah,
it's a fundamental I would consider to success, because you look around these days and you see a lot of people who, their shortcoming is that they start something and they never finish it, and there's so much power in consistency and completion, right? That that can just propel you onto another fucking planet, with regard to success.
Dude, I just want to take the mic for a sec. I got that same finish, full circle thinking is what I call it. Full circle thinking. If you're going to start it, you finish it, or you don't start it. It's that simple, right? I got that because of my dad. My dad's a beautiful man. Love the man completely. But he would start a project and he'd get it like 3/4 of the way done. His father was worse. He would start and get halfway done and walk away from it and go grab a Pabst Blue Ribbon. And that would be good for Saturday, right? But he was like halfway through it. My father went 3/4 of the way, and it drove me crazy. I'm like, why wouldn't you just finish that? Like, what? And then pretty soon you have 40 things that are kind of half finished, 3/4 finished. And I'm like, oh my God, that drives me crazy. So I said, I vowed to myself that I would never do that I would always do full circle. And that was that. And I have, and that's the cool part. And, that has translated directly into business, not just through process and system creation and all that, but, it comes down to your word, right? So when I say it's done, my word is my bond. Most of my contracts are handshakes, not, I do have paper and everything too, but we work back and forth, eye to eye, handshake type stuff, because I am a man of my word. I will over deliver on everything I say. That's just that's who I am. That is my identity. And no matter what, even showing up to a podcast, I'm early, right? That's just what it is. And I have a lot of people that show up to mine late. Like, it's not fashionable to be late. It's fucking rude. Okay. Because everybody that is involved has things to do. My schedule is lined up every day. And I don't even run it that much. My director of operations runs most of that. And I say, okay, from 1 to 2 is what I've got laid out for this. I am there early, ready to go. And it blows my mind, and you probably can feel this, but it blows my mind that people wouldn't be men and women of their word. Why would you not be? Like, why would you say something and have no intent ever of doing it? Right? It absolutely fascinates me. And that's the word I'm going to use right now. Fascinates me, especially for all you girls and guys out there listening that are in the trades.
Yeah.
People hate that shit. If you want to just separate and differentiate your business from everybody else, just do what you say you're going to fucking do.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's that simple. It doesn't require a $50,000 truck or a $2,000 website or whatever, fill in the blank. Just be a man or woman of your word. And that'll take you so far. And think about the referrals and all that stuff. So simple. Expectations. It's all about expectation management. Sales is that way. Business is that way. Life is that way. If you say X, deliver X plus. Simple. Yep. If you're going to say Y and deliver X, you wonder why somebody's pissed. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. This is pretty basic. So if you don't plan on being there at 3 o'clock, don't tell Mrs. Jones you're going to be there at 3 o'clock. Because then she's sitting there waiting for you at 3 o'clock, probably cleared her schedule, and then you don't show up and you're an asshole, just like the rest of them. You're giving all the trades a bad name because you want to yes people to death, but not actually carry through on it. So stop that shit. You say 3, be there at 58 after. Be ready to go. That's right. Oh, I'm off my podium now.
I couldn't have put it better myself. And you're absolutely right. And it's so so common these days. I mean, it is literally everywhere. I mean, I've got contractors in and out of my house right now, and I'm obviously not going to name any names, but yeah, it's like, hey, I'll be there at 7 o'clock tomorrow. 8:30 rolls around and they're still not there. And it's like, it is literally tell me you're going to be there at 10, then show up at 9, I mean, we could have a whole show.
No intent. I know if it's not if you know that you're not going to be there and your intent is just to tell them something they want to hear, you're crazy. Yeah. Why not just say what's going to happen? Like, dude, I know I say 7:30 in my heart. I want to be there at 7:30. It sounds real professional and be that 7:30, but I don't get out of bed until 7:15. So how the hell am I going to be there door and they're an hour away? Like, who am I kidding? Shit always comes up in the morning. There's always things going on. There's always fires to put out. Allow for that in your scheduling. Tell the client 10 o'clock. Be there at 9:30. Everybody's happy when you're a little early.
And you know what? The same applies if you're just getting into a trade and you're working for somebody else. Be on time. Just be on time. 100%. I've got 70 employees out there, man, and I'd say at least 10% of them are probably habitually late still.
Yeah.
And it's just like, all right, well, you wonder why so and so got a promotion over you. Yeah. You can't even be on time. Like it's so simple. So anyway, let's move on from that because I don't want to get pissed. I want to keep it positive. So a couple of things that you said here. We've got about 15 minutes left. So are you still good on time?
I'm still good on time, brother.
All right, perfect. All right, so a couple of things here. One of the things that stuck out to me that you said was that you started going to these functions, right, and these seminars and things like that were not in your industry, and you were able to take a lot of the things that you learned and implement them into your industry and your business, which is a huge. It's a huge plus, right? Because I consider a lot of the skilled trades a white space when it comes to outside thinking, right? A lot of our industries have the mindset of, well, we've always done it this way, so we're always going to do it this way because that's the best way. And so, we have an opportunity, you and I and everybody else that enters into the blue collar spaces, into these skilled trades, to innovate, to really genuinely innovate our industries. And so, I'm curious on some of the stuff that you had brought over, to implement into your business. Can you give me a couple of examples or one example of what
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely, dude. Yeah. So, being out around and seeing how others do it, other industries, other trades, other everything, so other business, let's just say it that way, right? I noticed one big glaring error in our business, the landscaping, outdoor living contracting world is systems and processes. Like, my father, none of that stuff, right? Anybody around me, other businesses that I knew, business owners, none of it. It was all seat of your pants, right? It's let's just work 5 days a week and get to the weekend and just enjoy it and go back working again for 5 days and do that till you're 68 and a half or 70 years old and fall over dead. Like that was the play. And, I kept asking myself bigger questions like, why is that? Why are you doing the same thing over and over again? Why is this the same problem? I saw that with my parents' business. They had the same problem over and over again, and they kept focusing. They took mental bandwidth to keep fixing a problem that they should have fixed the first time, but they didn't. They just kept going and going. Same thing. Oh, did you tell me that 4 times already? So anyway, going out and seeing other businesses, how they work. And I'm like, wait a minute here. So you're telling me that if we do a certain set of things, right, we'll just call them like a process, right? Everybody hates the word process because it sounds like you're putting yourself in a cage. Yeah. Not that way. That's actually freeing. It's the opposite of that. But it's the idea that you can actually take a certain thing. I'm going to use an example, right? Each day we would get the trucks ready to go out to the job sites, and we have to make sure there's fuel in the trailer, make sure that that there's oil in there, that the machine is everything's inside, that we have enough edging, that we have enough this, that we just fill in the blanks, make sure that inventory is correct. And as the owners, we used to do that. Employees weren't good enough to do that stuff. They'd fuck it up. Next thing you know, we'd go out to the job site and things would be missing. And then I go, an hour and a half round trip to go get nails and edging because I didn't see it or not enough concrete, whatever, fill in the blanks. So the point is, I eventually said, I am sick and tired of doing the same damn thing over and over and over and over again. And why am I doing it? When I go look at these other businesses, owners aren't doing that stuff. That's their employees' part, but they're not good enough to do that stuff. Well, the problem was that I just didn't give them enough space to do it. I had this ego problem where I could do everything the best. Mm-hmm. I was the best at everything. And I only hired people stupider than me so I can feel good, right? That was a big mistake, but hey, I didn't know any difference. That's what I did. So eventually I realized that was the dumbest way to possibly do it. And I said, all right, let's start empowering our people. And it wasn't easy in the beginning, but I said, all right, what if we just put together a checklist, simplest system or process you can possibly have, a checklist. And each morning when Jesse comes in, Jesse's going to do A, B, and C, and I'm going to show up a little bit later or go directly to the job site. They can pick up the truck and trailer at the yard and they can go out to the place. And if something's missing, it's Jesse's ass. And I just had to trust. Trust was the hardest thing. Yeah. And to be honest with you, and this is a whole other podcast, to be happy to come on and talk about building personal trust so you can finally trust other people because it starts on the inside. You cannot trust other people, or if you can't trust people, it's because you don't trust you. That's the problem. And I had to fix that part in me. That's been a journey, right? The trust issues, right? So, and anyway, so I had to start trusting, and I eventually did start trusting, and they did a better job than me, I have to say. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I don't gotta think about that anymore. What am I going to do with that kind of time? It might even be 10 minutes, but then I would 20 other things that I didn't want to do and talk to them about it. Next thing you know, they're managing all of that. Now it's an hour a day times 5 is 5 hours. I could work on my business instead of in it. Yeah. Holy shit. This is what I saw other people doing. This is how it's possible for them. All because I started asking bigger questions. Yeah. That's one right there. Bang. I could keep going. I know we're tight on time, so I don't want to go too crazy.
That's all right. And that leads perfectly, into kind of, I was going to ask you about, asking better questions. I have that written down here too. I think that was a conversation about leadership. We don't have to go down that road. Like I said, we've got only a few minutes left, but I'm glad that you tied that back full circle. So thank you for doing that. All right. So just a couple more questions for you real quick here. Number one, what would you say to anybody out there, whether they're just coming out of high school or in high school, or even a young adult that doesn't know what they want to do? What would you say about the blue collar trades or working with your hands? What kind of advice would you give them?
Job security. Let's be honest. You start a business in the trades, there ain't no fucking app that's going to fix that. Your air conditioner breaks, guess what? You can pound on your phone all you want. It's not going to fix it. You want landscaping done, patios, pools. You want, siding done. You want a roof done. There ain't no fucking app for that. So the reality is we will always have work. Now it's a matter of differentiating yourself that you can be top dog. So you can finally, you can charge what you're worth. Yeah. And not have to worry about competing with everybody else for their damn numbers. And you're like, oh, well, Sam, he charges $38 a square. So I'm going to charge 37. That's how I'm going to win. That is the most fucked up conversation to ever have. But that's how I started my business. Is exactly how I did it. Right. I was like, how many per square foot, or what's the price per square foot of paver? And that's how I priced it until I realized I was an absolute idiot. And then once I figured that out, I'm like, holy crap. So anyway, my point is that's how you do that. No, that's good advice. And you're absolutely right, because you know what? It's really funny because a lot of times when I ask people, particularly parents, why do you push college so much for your kids? They say job security. So, that's bullshit. Figure that one out. But all right, last question. I talk often, even in the book and on the podcast, about success and how everybody doesn't fit into this neat little box of what success looks like, right? Everybody has a different version or different definition of success.
So, Joshua, what is your definition of success, and how is what you're doing now helping you achieve it?
Okay, my definition of success is very simple. It's freedom, living life on my terms. That's what it is, point blank. Now, how do you achieve that? Well, that's not quite as easy. It's easy to say, not easy to do. And in order to get to that point, you got to be clear. You got to be clear about why you're alive. Right? The two most important days of your life, the day you're born and the day you figure out why. Now, that might sound all fun and unicorn and crazy, like long-haired hippie people kind of thoughts, you know what I mean? But the reality is, it takes that kind of clarity in order to get yourself lined up. Every single entrepreneur that I know that is extremely successful by my measure and by many others as well are clear. They're very clear on why they do what they do. They are very clear on what they want, and they're very clear on the discipline it takes to get there. That's the secret. What are you willing to do every single day that you don't like in order to keep proving to yourself that you'll do the things that you don't like in business or in life, and you'll keep doing them? Now, it might sound nuts. You're like, why would I even want to do that? The discipline of the mind is number one thing you need to work on. When it comes down to it, if you aren't hitting your goals fast enough, it's because you're not disciplined enough. I learned that the hard way too. I learned everything the hard way. Like, you could read books, but until you get punched around and black eyes and broken bones, you don't really feel it. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's about discipline is the main thing. So for me, it's about freedom, obviously living life on my terms. But once you get to that point, you then have to start thinking about, okay, what does that actually mean? Because, you know, to be honest with you, dude, at 43 years old, my wife and I, we retired in May of this year, right? We don't have to worry about that. I'm financially free. It's fine. It's great. It was a goal. It's done. But now what? Now what? You know what? I can sit here and say, okay, good. Retirement means sit on my ass. I have no fucking interest in that, man. I am lit up more now than I ever was. When I was poor as dirt, when I got married with no dollars in my pocket, I had just as much spunk then, and now I've 10x'd it now, because it's not about money anymore. Now it's about impact. It's about how many others can I bring up with me? How many others can I help? Where all the people that weren't there for me when I was younger, you know, all the mentors I wish I had. Thank God I didn't, because I wouldn't be where I am. But, you know, all I wished I had, I want to make sure that that's available for people, that we have a podcast. That's why we spend. I mean, I know you do it. You put your heart and soul into this thing, right? And I do the same with mine. I mean, we have 70 plus episodes now, and it's like they're an hour a piece and editing, all that stuff. And it's like, it is an absolute, you know, it's a job if you want it to be. I actually have people that take care of that. So I'm trying to make this a little more dramatic than usual. But the reality is that I never realized that back in those days when I first started, when I was bailing hay, that I would be on a computer talking to people all the time. And that's my flow state right now, Josh. Like right now we're talking, I have no clue what time it is. And you're going to tell me to stop at some point, but this is what lights me up. So doing events and teaching classes and empowering people is what lights me the fuck up. So how many can I do? How much more can I do? I don't need to do this. I don't need to run 8 businesses, dude. I don't need to do that, but I choose to. Live on my terms. I choose to do that because it lights me the fuck up.
Yeah. Right on, man. Well said. Very well said. And like my man Jocko Willink says, discipline equals freedom.
100%, dude.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. Joshua, man, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show. Before we hop off, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Absolutely. No, I'd love to. And thank you for having me on. It's been fun. I always love talking. You know that. So a couple options there for that. We have our coaching program. If you're interested, you know, we do sales coaching for service industry. So it's not directly set to the landscaping world. We actually do custom sales processes for, as long as you do either direct sales to consumer or you do a design build model. We can definitely set up a system for you to do exactly that. It'll take the stress off. You'll get your homeowners to say yes with far less stress. That's the whole goal. And we actually have a free sales boot camp, we call it. It's a little intro program. If any of your listeners want to take advantage of that, I don't ask for anything. I'm not looking for any money. You can use it and just forget I ever talked to you about it. You ever download it, doesn't matter, or come talk to us if you'd like to. It's you can text freedom to 33777. Again, freedom to 33777. And that'll launch you in a couple of videos just to kind of make you dangerous. Understand a little bit more about how to empower your customers, how to be the guide in the situation, not the sleazy salesman. Because if sales doesn't come natural to you, and it didn't to me, but you still want to grow a business and you still want to, help and empower people and serve, well, too. Just there is other ways. Let's put it that way. So a lot of my students, they're like, I hate the idea of us being a salesperson. By the end of our training, they're like, oh my God, I feel like, this is totally, this is not sales. This is something else, but I still get even better results than your typical used car salesman routine. Or you can take a look at yes.express. That's our website for that, for the consulting side. So it's yes.express. There's no .com in there. Or you can even go on Instagram, and I'm at Joshua Gillo. You can see what's going on over there. But that's the best way to hit us.
Awesome. Well, Joshua, thank you again so much for spending your valuable time with me on this show. And until next time, my friend.
Absolutely, brother. Keep killing it.